Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee with Craig. This is where we talk about firearms, the Second Amendment, firearms policy, you name it, all relating to the Second Amendment. And, we talk about politics, culture, you name it, wherever it's plugged in. So please do us a favor before we get started. Please make it a point to like and share. That's like and share both this video feed, because we're feeding live to Facebook and YouTube, and hopefully soon we'll be adding Twitter. But we'll be we stream live to all of those, both of those platforms. So we want you to join in with us in the conversation. Also, please make it a point to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our Facebook page, and as well as follow us on Twitter once again, so that you can be a part of the conversation. So let's get started, shall we? It's always interesting when we start talking about how, laws are done. And, I once heard someone say that, when they compared making laws, kind of like going to a sausage factory. It's like, you really don't want to see how it's made. And then I heard someone once tell me, and quite frankly, this happens to be my opinion, I think that gives sausage making a bad name. And I want to use as an example the California state legislature and how they go about making policy. Now, in California, we have these deadlines, right? And one of those deadlines is you have a deadline in which to introduce new legislation. And following that deadline, there's supposed to be 30 days in which no new legislation is supposed to be introduced. And the idea is to give people 30 days to take a look at it, make sure that, okay, this is what we're going to be talking about. Right? These are the ideas. These are the discussion. As of February 16th, 2018, our legislative agenda is supposed to be set. Now, there is this thing that exists in the California state legislature known as the gut and amend. Now, the gut and amend is in essence where you take all of the language that is in a current bill, and you take all of that language out and you replace it with entirely different language. Now, one would ask, well, why would you do that? Well, it's done for a couple of different reasons. One is so that you can hide what it is that you're trying to do. But secondly, it's so that you can, how shall we say, it's basically done so that you can get stuff over on people, where you don't really have to have a full, open, and honest discussion about it. You just say, well, hey, you know what? That's what we're going to do. Here's a video that was done by KQED that actually kind of, in a very comical way, portrays gut and amends for exactly what they are and helps kind of educate you a little bit on the process and how it works here in California.
When time's running out for passing bills in the legislature, the time is just right for the Gut and Amend Favor Maker Extreme. If you want your very own perk, tax credit, or giveaway, the Gut and Amend Favor Maker Extreme is for you. Just take an existing piece of legislation, tear out the guts, and fill it with whatever you want. Got a thing for selling kangaroo skins? Use Gut and Amend to cleanly eviscerate an existing bill, then change it into a bill that is friendlier to the kangaroo skin lobby. What's not to like? With Gut and Amend, the possibilities are endless. Turn a bill about absentee voting into a bill that gives raises to prison guards. Why not gut legislation about community colleges and turn it into legislation about NFL stadiums? So if you're a lobbyist, lawmaker, or interest group, why would you use Gut and Amend? Because it's easy and, used correctly, secretive. Pulling a last-minute switcheroo right before the legislative session ends is one way to keep the public out of your business. Pass legislation without the people even knowing about it. What they can't see, they can't complain about. Sure, once in a while lawmakers say they'll put a stop to Gut and Amend, but it's still here. Just look at these actual bills made with the Gut and Amend Favor Maker Extreme. Gut and Amend. Hurry, get yours before the legislative session ends. Available next legislative session as well. Transparency not included.
I love every time I get it. Every time I've seen that one, it has cracked me up. But it's pretty much what it is. Now, what they don't tell you in that what they don't tell you is that in order to be able to do the gut amend, you have to be in the majority party. In this case, that would be the Democratic Party here in the state of California. You have to control the Rules Committee and control the floor and control each of the committees where these things are heard. Because, see, in order to amend a bill, there's this issue that's called germaneness, meaning that if a bill is going to be amended, the amendments must be germane to what's discussed already in the bill. Well, when you take everything out and then you put all new language in, one would have to be illiterate to believe that what is now in the bill is germane to what was in the bill previously. I keep questioning, when is somebody going to challenge the literacy of the chair? Because, by the way, maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse, germaneness is not determined by actually reading the bill. Germaneness is determined by a ruling of the chair or the presiding officer. Now, any member of the body may challenge the ruling of the chair, and then by a majority vote, they determine whether or not it is in fact germane, not whether or not it actually is germane. So, as they said, that's how you turn a bill dealing with security guards winds up becoming a bill. Security guards. A bill dealing with community college winds up being a raise for correctional officers. That's also how a bill dealing with environmental standards winds up being a gun ban. Because, well, hey, that's what they do. They change these bills, and the majority just determines, well, hey, you know what? I'm going to say that it is germane. And that leads us to the topic that I wanted to discuss today, which is California Democrats gut and amend civil rights. Once again, we've seen another massacre happen. We've seen a situation what took place in Parkland, Florida. And needless to say, legislators are now coming out of the woodworks to declare that, I'm doing this in the case of Parkland. And, it was funny. Just yesterday, I was testifying before the Assembly Public Safety Committee, and Assemblyman Gloria, who had a bill dealing with training for concealed carry permits, said, well, clearly you can look at what happened in Florida and realize we have a problem with guns. And I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. What does that have to do with concealed carry permits in California? There's never been there. Since 1923, since we've had concealed carry permits in the state of California, there's never been an issue. There's never been an incident with concealed carry permit holders in California. There hasn't. Let alone anything having to do with someone who purchased an AR-15 in Florida on a school campus. What? But because of that, they feel like they can just do pretty much whatever they want. And a bunch of the legislators, it's not just Assemblyman Gloria. You take guys like Phil Ting. Assemblyman Phil Ting has a bill that he says he's going to address the issue of gun violence restraining orders and expand gun violence restraining orders, except that the bill hasn't been introduced yet. We're over a month past the deadline to introduce bills, and it hasn't been introduced. But you know what he's going to do? He's going to gut and amend a bill. There's also supposedly going to be a bill that is going to redefine what an assault weapon is, to basically ban any semi-automatic centerfire or rimfire rifle in the state of California. Guess what? There's no language on it. They did a press conference on this almost a month ago, and there's still no language. Why? Because they're going to do a gut and amend. They did a press conference a little over a month ago on the idea of taxing firearms and ammunition in order to pay for school counselors. Yeah, to pay for school counselors. Oh, and on-campus security. Once again, no language yet. Why? Because they're going to gut and amend the language in. Here's my question. Now, And maybe Assemblyman Cooper, Assemblyman Ting, Assemblyman Bonta, Assemblyman Gloria, one of you people who are in charge there in the majority party in the state of California, answer me this. If you don't take your own rules seriously, if you are willing to ignore your own rules, the rules that you set forth, why should us law-abiding citizens take anything you have to say seriously? Other than the force of law, why should we listen to anything you have to say? Why should we follow the rules? If only for then once again, the force of law aside. Because clearly, ethically, you have no moral high ground. You ignore your own rules. And then you exempt your fellow government officials from most of the laws and the rules that you put in place. So why should we listen to you? You have abdicated any moral high ground by saying, yeah, no, we're going to ignore our own rules so that we can institute rules that we're going to make law-abiding citizens follow. I don't get how you think. Maybe I need to explain something to you. See, when you are in the majority, when you have the ability to set the rules, you have a higher ethical obligation. You don't get to do just whatever you want. You need to do what is right. And you have a higher ethical standard because ultimately you're the ones that are setting the rules. If the only rule is, well, we have the majority, so we make the rules, and we also determine who gets exceptions to the rules, which basically is going to be us, the majority, well, then you have no moral foundation for anything that you say or anything that you do, and therefore should not be taken seriously. In particular, when we know and you're introducing legislation that you haven't even taken the time to understand, because I know already you don't know the law. I know because when you go to introduce your bill, you're going to be reading off of cue cards that were written for you by some staffer who knows probably little more than you do about the bill. And when you are questioned by members who also don't know anything about the topic, don't know anything about the law, don't know anything about firearms. How do I know you don't know anything about firearms? I'll go back to my example of Assemblyman Gloria again, who when questioned about CCW training said, well, I know what I'm talking about. I was trained to be on the rifle team in high school. What does that have to do with CCW training? Are you really that ignorant that you don't know when you are ignorant? Evidently so. This, folks, is the world that I live in every day when I step into the state capitol. People who are so ignorant they do not even know that they are ignorant and aren't even willing to admit that maybe, just possibly, they don't know something because they feel they have the moral high ground because they've got to do something. I always use the example. I always say, doing something is not necessarily the same as doing something that's going to work. It's kind of like saying, my car won't start, so I should change the tires because I've got to do something. In particular, when incidents like what happened in Parkland, Florida happened, I get that people get emotional. And people start pushing forth rhetoric because they're very emotional. But when you are a policymaker, one would think that you would choose to be the adult in the room and say, you know what, maybe I should educate myself. Maybe I should take the time to know what I'm talking about. Instead of trying to rush legislation by gutting and amending bills and putting in legislation that I don't have full understanding, if any, of, then maybe I should come to understand it. Then maybe I wouldn't do things like Assemblyman Cooper did when he first introduced his bill for his ammo and gun tax and called it a fee because he didn't realize that a fee has to have a nexus between who's paying it and what it's paying for. He didn't know that. So when he first started talking about it, he started calling it a fee. Someone educated him and told him that it was a tax. I hope they told him that now his new tax will require a 2/3 vote of both houses of the legislature. If they did, he'll likely start calling it a fee again. Why? Because he's not that informed. Shall we say ignorant on the topic. But hey, who needs to have to know anything in order to be a legislature? All you have to do is win a popularity contest, in particular in the state of California, popularity amongst the right union organizations. Such is our life here in the great state of California. But once again, I think this is all the more reason why I think all of us should be standing against this process. And, even though KQED, even though in their little thing they didn't want to talk about how gut and amends are being used to violate our Second Amendment rights because, well, they support violating our Second Amendment rights, I think it does point to the fact that when you use unethical, dirty tricks like this, that eventually they will be used to violate something that you do care about. So maybe, just maybe, the time has come to put an end to these unconstitutional practices. Just a thought. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. I thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, please make it a point to like and share our Facebook page. Please make it a point to like and share our YouTube channel and subscribe to it. And tell your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Remember, got to use them or you're going to lose them. Take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.